This episode is brought to you by Camilla Najat with Exit Realty Metro.
Camilla Najat is an experienced real estate agent who prides herself in finding the perfect home for her clients. Camilla can help you with a comparative market analysis to help determine the value of your home if you're planning on selling, or help you determine the going rate for the neighborhood you're moving into. She can also work with you at your pace.
You can reach Camilla by calling 902-880-8429 or email camilla@exitmetro.ca.
Also, you can find her on Facebook at Camilla Najat, Exit Realty Metro. This is Matt Conrad.
And this is Mike Tobin.
Welcome to the Afternoon Pint.
This week we speak with the Honourable Brendan Maguire. We talk a bit about what it takes to be a modern-day MLA and his backstory of how he ended up getting into politics. Enjoy. All right, cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers. All right.
And welcome to the Afternoon Pint. Matt, you brought our guest today, so I think it's best you introduce him.
All right. So we have Brendan Maguire here. He's a good friend of mine. He's also the MLA for Halifax Atlantic. That's not exactly why we brought him here, but we brought him here because, he has a interesting kind of story to tell. And yeah, we are having our pints and we just did our cheers. And I had this fantastic Belgian cherry triple that I just finished up. You were having the rye and the storm. Brendan's having water. So basically Coors Light.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, so here at the Afternoon Pint, a cold one doesn't necessarily mean it has to be an alcoholic beverage. So we want you to enjoy, this podcast however you choose to enjoy your cold one.
What they're not telling you is that Matt just ordered a new beer, and what was it, mango something?
Mango Saison. That was the next one I ordered, and it was not what I expected.
Yeah, tell them the look on your face when you took your first drink.
Yeah, well, I went from this delicious cherry, 9%, but extremely smooth 9% beer here at Serpent to a little bit heavier bodied mango Saison, which was a little bit different. So
He's a beer snob.
Shifting the gears quite a bit, so it wasn't quite what I was expecting.
I think that was always my big problem with beer is all these new fandangle types of beer. Let's have a pine wood cherry beer. It's no, none of it's good. Chocolate beer, I don't want that. I actually enjoyed Coors Light. So I don't drink anymore. But
that's funny.
I enjoyed Coors Light. Actually, my wife Rena got me into because she made fun of me a lot for drinking Bud Light and Coors Light.
Yeah.
So she got me into German beer.
German beer's great.
Yeah, German beer is actually great. Yeah. So
fantastic.
Same with, used to drink Captain Morgan rum, and then she was like, what are you doing? And then introduced me to good rum. So I tell that to people all the time. There is a difference.
So you like rum?
There's a reason
I do. I was a Scot. So I stopped drinking mostly for my own mental health kind of stuff.
Sure, yeah.
For me, it was anxiety and depression is something I battle with. And I found alcohol just kind of made it worse.
Okay.
I didn't drink very often, but
mostly with me.
Yeah, that's true. I found
maybe that was the actual problem.
That might have been the problem. There were some hot tub stories. I'm not going to get into those. Where I was the only one in the hot tub.
You were the only one.
We rented an Airbnb one time, and it had a hot tub.
Yeah.
So and that was the first thing you wanted to do.
What do? You get in the hot tub.
Except you didn't bring a bathing suit.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, but I mean, what's the difference?
Jumped in your underwear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But he was all like, come on in, it's water, it's warm. And I was like, no, I'm good, man. Pass it. So
you can get into it.
No.
Anyways, thanks for having me today. Appreciate it.
No problem.
No, thanks for coming. Thanks for making time. I know you're a busy dude. Sometimes you text me back. Sometimes you call me back. Sometimes you don't. Things like that.
Yeah. Sometimes his texts are stupid. Sometimes they're not.
That's actually fair, but you know what?
Especially during football season.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, he's a Vikings fan. I'm a Patriots fan, so.
Okay.
Do you watch football?
No, and I don't even know what's happening.
Yeah.
No. I mean, nothing against it. Just not for me.
I found that as I get older, I watch sports less.
Yeah.
And I think, I've got 3 young children, and I think it's time. Children are obviously time consuming, but I also find I think I just care less.
I
about-
like.
Yeah, but your son
I
loves
like to get
sports. though.
together.
does.
I
Like
love
that-
playoffs, and I love like the Super Bowl. I watch Super Bowl every
Yeah.
year, and I always have people over. I always make a big thing about it, and always cook like way too much meat. And
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but like that.
Oh,
that's
you
it.
know what you'd actually, you know what, he would love that because he is a smoker and he smokes things all the time. That's right up his alley.
Smoking ribs and stuff like that. Man.
burnt
It's
ends.
like
Yeah.
a little passion.
I haven't, even though I'm Canadian, I haven't watched a moment of the Stanley Cup playoffs since the last time I watched actually any hockey was when Sidney Crosby scored
The golden goal?
the golden goal.
13
Oh,
years
yeah.
ago.
13 years ago is the
Oh,
last
that's
time
the
I
last time I
watched
watched
hockey.
hockey.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. So
Okay.
I did beat you there. I watched Toronto this year because I actually thought they were going to win. I was
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
like,
Everybody else
I was
did.
like,
Yeah.
they might do it this year. I want to witness it.
I hear
I
that.
know.
I hear it's the same every year, isn't it?
It is pretty much. Well, not every year because we went to the second round this year. That's different from the last 20 years. But yeah, other than that, it. But yeah, your son is that, so that's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
you
I
could
mean,
connect with him.
Oliver definitely. I mean, he loves to play more than he loves. Same with my girls; they both love sports a lot. So
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, I find like especially for young kids, it's good. I mean, you have to realize, they're 10, 8, and 6. You'd know already if they were superstar athletes. I would assume.
Yeah.
Probably.
So at this point, I think it's just like making memories and teamwork and learning the core values of that stuff.
I
think that's
a
very
little
important.
bit like to be in your job in MLA. I really didn't even know what it was. And you sent a card in the mail one day to Gracie, and it was just like, congratulations on making a swim team.
Yeah.
When she made the swim team. And I'm like, who is this guy?
Who's this creepy guy that just said something?
I'm like, how does he know this?
His old man said,
I gotta say
stepdaughter.
that it really meant a lot to Andrea.
Yeah.
My partner. She's a great fan of you,
Yeah.
and I appreciated it as well. I thought it was really sweet. Right? What a nice sentiment.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for people that I guess don't know, MLA is the member of the Legislative Assembly, so it's provincial representative for this community, Spryfield here in Coben. I'm going into my 11th year. To be frank, I never thought I was ever going to get elected. Right? It was kind of a strange ride. I'll tell you this: though, I am a Liberal MLA. You obviously have to pick a party for the most part. The Liberal Party didn't even think I was going to win in 2012.
Really?
In fact, oh God, no! They put zero effort behind me until they're like, wait a second, there's some stuff going on out there, and this guy's working hard. Like, I started knocking on doors a year before the election, from the community and stuff, and that obviously helps. But when they were looking for a candidate, it was my wife, my partner Rena, that really convinced me to run for politics.
She convinced you.
Yeah, because I used to complain a lot about like things that were going on, like more so investments in the community, and she was just like, one day she looked over at me and she was just like, "Shut up and run."
Oh,
Like,
really?
like, just shut up and do something about it. Now, she comes from a very political family.
She's political. Yeah.
And I thought, like, even though I was an extrovert, you're still, man,
It's daunting.
oh my God, but it's so, like, nerve-wracking to knock on doors and be like, "Hi, my name is Brendan."
Your emotional intelligence
Yeah.
and tolerance has to be at a very endured level, I would imagine.
You get
I
a-
just don't have the.
You get a little bit of everything at the door, and you see a little bit of everything too. But
Yeah.
I do find that so once I won and things like that, I will say that like I think people's perception of you change a lot. Like I went from being like Brendan to being like that liberal
Superman?
No, yeah. But people are just like even my own like close people that I've been close friends for a long time. Some of those relationships fell apart because just
Over an issue?
over
or
just
over
politics and
something?
like
Yeah.
and like
People
there's
draw lines in the
yeah,
sand.
and it's just like I find it funny like some people just can't let it go. So like
Right.
when you're out with them, that's all they want to do is like go on and on and on about
That's
stuff.
unfortunate.
And I'd be like you're an electrician. I don't go on and on about
Yeah, you're robbing me.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
$200 an hour.
Yep.
so
Yeah.
so I mean it's I think it's changed a lot over 10 years, that's for sure. 11 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like the anti-social media guy, probably of this circle. I would say I use it the least. I observe and I like things that are only pleasant and don't hurt anyone. Like, it's like, I had a wonderful
we
rainbow
need
and
more
butterflies
people like you in
day.
this world.
I'm like, here, I'll give you a heart because that sounded like a really nice day.
Yeah.
And aside from that, though, I don't really comment on social media.
You don't do those posts like, oh my God, worst thing ever, and then just like dot.
Never.
Oh,
Those are my favorite posts. Like people are like, oh my God,
the cryptic posts.
I can't believe this just happened. Dot. And everyone's
And
like, are you okay?
I respect what you do.
Or
'cause
check in at the hospital.
Yeah.
My whole thing is like, to fight it out with somebody in your driveway, or to have I shouldn't say fight it out even, but like to have a discussion in your driveway to me is so much more polarizing. Social media to me is just like,
It's poison.
And it's not all bad, right? It really isn't, because it does give people a voice who otherwise wouldn't have one.
Oh yeah, but I do think that I read somewhere, and forgive me for not knowing, but I read somewhere that when it comes to actual news,
right,
first contact of a story or hearing about something in the news, 90% of people hear about it first on Facebook.
Yeah.
Now you think like, yeah, that makes sense.
Wow.
But the other 10% is written media, it's television, it's traditional media, it's Twitter, and it's all the other social media out there. So the power that these that's the social media holds over people is scary to me, because some people believe everything they read, right?
Yeah.
No, that's true.
And it really has gotten rid of long form journalism. So there's no more long form journalism anymore. It's just like clickbait, right?
No, it's hard to find, and you got to pay for it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, that's the thing, and I mean, in fairness, people pay for so much these days. It's kind of hard to rationalize how much to pay for, a New York Times article or a Globe and Mail post or whatever it is, like where you have accredited journalists writing. Halifax Examiner does great work.
Tim does a great job,
right? And but it's hard to always just like, oh geez, I got to subscribe to something else just to read this.
I know, and
people share those articles, and then I went to click on one just the other day, and it was like, you got to subscribe. I'm like, I'm not subscribing just to read this one article. It's like I must be able to find it somewhere else, but you couldn't. But it's one of those things, like social media brings a certain positive element.
Oh yeah.
It can unite people and bring some positive things like that have a really positive message, or it can be there for support. And there's all these great things that can happen with social media, that you can keep in contact with people so easily from all around the world that you would normally not be able to do before.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the reverse to that is there's a lot of negativity, and you can, like, that negativity at the same time would, those people who are being negative also can gather online better than ever before, and then you become, and it's kind of spitfires a little bit, or spitballs,
and
or whatever.
like human beings, I think we naturally silo, and we go in the group we're comfortable in.
Right.
That's all humans, right? And that's not a slight against anyone.
No.
And I think that most people would agree with that assumption, right?
Right.
Very, very few people go out there and
Right.
just walk in uncomfortable waters all day. Right?
So I will say, when it comes to politics, that is something that I've learned, and I think it's one of the greatest personal things that I've been able to take out of this journey into politics is that being uncomfortable being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And so, for me, and I think like most people, like when you walk into a room, you naturally gravitate to people that you know. Mm-hmm. So we try to avoid rooms and places where we don't know anyone. Mm-hmm. And so, I used to be really nervous. Like, I come from a pretty modest background, and a lot of people that get into politics have money, and they have family that have been involved in politics for a long time. They know quote unquote powerful people and stuff like that. So I didn't know any of those people. So I'd be in these rooms, and I'd be at these events, and I wouldn't know anyone. And now,
Are you? And then let me just ask subtly. You don't have to answer this, but like, are you threatened a lot in those environments when you don't know a lot of people? Sometimes I feel people really love to scorn you.
Yeah, I used to be very
love to show their power.
Yeah.
I can destroy you, kind of.
I used to be uncomfortable. I used to be like, I think at times I've really noticed the way people talk to me.
Yeah.
And there's certain types of people that in politics in particular, where they're always looking for the most powerful person in the room. So, if you walk in the room as an MLA and you're the only MLA in the room, and I've had this happen where someone's come up to me, you're like, blah, 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 and they're talking to me, and mid-sentence they see someone else that comes in that's maybe a cabinet minister or somebody who's at a higher level, and like literally mid-sentence walked away from me.
Wow.
And went to that person.
Gross.
So I think for me, like being comfortable in uncomfortable situations is really helped me grow as a person. So like I can walk into a room now and I'm actually really comfortable if I don't know anyone, and I'm actually really comfortable just standing by myself, which I think is very hard to do in a really packed room. So it's very, so I think I've become more comfortable in my skin and just more comfortable with who I am.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing we can kind of rewind a little bit and kind of get back to this, but rewind a little bit in terms of like how you've kind of grown and changed as much as a person. Because I mean, you've been quite open about your family history and how where you kind of came from. So I mean, give us a little bit about that. I know it. You may not know it, but I mean, I know a little bit about kind of where you came from. And personally, I think it's a fantastic story that needs to be told more from someone who's come from basically being alone to where you are, and like having you have a great wife, great kids, good job, family, like community loves you. It's a good success story that I think more people should be told.
Yeah, so I was actually born in a place called Weymouth, England. My whole family, most of my family, I have five brothers and sisters. Later on in life, I found out I had another sister, which was kind of fun to find out about. We were kind of born all over the place, but most of us were born in Ireland and England and places like that. So, so my children.
You yourself, where were you born?
Weymouth, England. So my children are like, for the Maguires, for the most part, are first generation Canadians.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird. My biological father's name is Brendan, so I was named after him, and my biological mother's name is Bridget. They came over to Canada. They weren't here very long, and they essentially, well, I shouldn't say essentially, they decided that they didn't want to be parents anymore, and they left us at Halifax Shopping Centre and walked away. So I would have been probably 4. I don't really remember it.
So they left you at the Halifax Shopping Centre and just walked away.
Yeah, I just left.
The mall and walked away.
Yeah, I just left. Yeah,
that's fucked. Excuse my language.
Oh yeah, no, fuck, I don't care.
Yeah.
So it would have been me. So Michael would have been the youngest. Michael, myself, Rosaline, Desmond, and Paul, or Paul and Desmond. So Desmond would have been the oldest. He probably would have been about 9 at the time. And then we ended up in foster care. I spent 20 years, no, less than 20 years. So it was for, I don't know, probably 15, 16 years. I've spent all of my teenage years and all of my young years in as a ward of the court, which means, you don't have parents, and so the government is responsible for you. I went through several different foster families for sure. I lived in group home. I lived on the streets for a while. Definitely.
Here in Halifax or another province?
In Halifax, yeah. Everything was in Halifax, or Nova Scotia, I should say.
Sure.
We were all separated, like my brothers and sisters and I were all separated. But then in the end, my sister and I lived in a foster home together in Herrinco for quite some time, actually. So Desmond and Paul, my older siblings, I didn't really know them, but we were able to have 2, what they called supervised visits a year at the Department of Community Services. So my social worker would come pick me up, me and my sister, and they would sit us down in this room. It was like a clinical room with no windows.
It's weird. So like they sit you down like community center and you just
no, they take you over to the Department of Community Services head office, and they would put you in this room with no windows, with the 4 of us there, and there'd be a gentleman, or usually it was a guy in the corner just taking notes. So they were like observing us and how we acted with each other. My brother Michael, my youngest brother, was actually adopted out almost immediately, and I didn't get to see him again until he was in the military, and he was going to Afghanistan, and they flew him back to Halifax to meet us all before he went to Afghanistan, which was really nice. My siblings, none of us are really that close anymore.
Sure.
It's hard to be close when, like for me, I moved around a lot. I moved out on my own when I was 15 years old and never looked back really. Yeah, I mean, it was just wasn't an easy way to grow up. But I always say like I wouldn't change anything. And I mean, like anyone in those situations, like I first of all, I was very lucky. When I moved to Phoenix, which was a group home, I met some really good counselors, and they helped me through a lot of different things.
How old were you when you moved to Phoenix home?
Well, I was at the time I was living in my own apartment, and I was 17, and I was hell. As you can imagine, I was
right on.
fucking. I was a shithead.
Yeah,
so it might have been 18 actually.
Yeah, so this is the other thing too. It's like he's saying like I wouldn't change anything, and the other thing that I pick up on what you're saying is like I was really lucky, and a lot of people in your situation, or even in better situations, wouldn't use the word I was really lucky, right? Which is an interesting kind of perspective to have, which is why I think this is a cool conversation and a good story to tell, because life and perspective and what you can turn your life into, and if you have
I mean, it's for me, when I say lucky, I mean like for me, I learned lessons at an early age. I always say that I made my first adult decision when I was 6 years old. So I was living with a foster family at the time, and I was enjoying it. I'll say there was some physical abuse, but it was tolerable, I will say. And my sister and I were living there at the time, and my foster mother sat us down at the table one day and was like, "So here's the decision." She said, "You have a choice to make here today." And she said, we're moving to Ontario. Her husband had been stationed; he was in the military. She was like, "We're moving to Ontario. You can come with us and be part of our family, and you'll have a stable family for the rest of your life. You'll be ours, or you can go back into foster care, which is still technically in foster care, but you'll go back to a different foster family." Yeah. And she said, "You're at an age right now. You and your sister are at an age right now where people are not going to adopt you. 6 and 8 years old for the most part is a little too old for most people to adopt."
Sure.
And so I was like, you know what? Fuck this, man. I'm all for it, right? And then I looked over at my sister, and there was just something. I mean, at this point, I was 6 years old. I think I'd already learned or started to learn how to read people.
At 6 years old?
Oh, yeah. And so I just looked at her, and I was just like, "Is that my wife?" You know what I mean? Yeah, good. So I knew something was wrong with my sister, and so I said, "You know what, fuck it. We're leaving." And what I found out later on was one of the kids at the house had been molesting my sister. So I didn't find that out until years later. But that choice I made that day, my sister allowed me to make it. My older sister set us on a path where we knew we were never going to get stability again. Like we weren't. So, it was the first adult decision I ever made. But again, I say like I've been through a lot, but I wouldn't change anything.
You mentioned Phoenix House. Like, tell us a little bit about what the place is. That still exist now?
So Phoenix House is this phenomenal organization that it's for youth in care, and it's a group home. I was pulled out. It was at 18 years old. Actually, I was living on my own for a couple of years then at the time, and and I've been open with this. I was actually arrested for, essentially mischievous, but I think we broke into a car. Me and my buddies were drunk one night. We broke into a car or something, and the cops caught us. Something I'm not proud of, but I was charged for it and got probation and all that stuff, and it's all part of the story. So then my social worker was like, "You know what, you need some structure, bud." I was terrible. Like, I never struggled at school when I tried, but I was failing school and I was doing horrible at it. So she was like, "You need some fucking structure." So I ended up at Phoenix House. And Phoenix House has been fantastic for me because actually, I lived there for a year. It got me back on the path with school in particular and showed me the importance of school. Helped me with, I had a lot of anger and depression and still deal with the depression to this day, but, gave me some coping mechanism. But the best thing that ever came out of it was the Linda Wilson and Marion Brown and all these people that work there. are still part of my life. In fact, Linda Wilson.
Does she still work at the Phoenix House?
No,
now?
she's
Retired?
gone.
Yeah.
She works for Shelter Nova Scotia now. She runs Shelter Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow, okay.
So she was running Phoenix House at the time. She's actually the godmother of my son.
Wow.
So like
That's cool.
It's and when I first ran for politics in 2013, a lot of the people that worked at Phoenix House stepped up and helped me. Right. So
Beautiful.
it's been a big family for me. So yeah, I mean. I always say like I got lucky because I met a lot of the right people at the right time, but I also had like this desire to like, when you're in foster homes and when you're in group homes and stuff like that, unfortunately you see a lot of people that go down the wrong path, and I was just like, fuck this. Like I just remember thinking like I'm not fucking, because everybody kept telling me, my teachers told me it, my counselors told me it, I had social workers tell me it, guardians tell me that I was never going to amount to anything, and that's what they expected from me, and I was like, fuck that, like I'm just going to prove you all wrong.
It helped you soar.
Oh
In a
yeah,
weird
wow,
way.
man,
In a weird way,
it did,
right?
it did, it just it drove me, right? And for some people, I think I spend a lot of time now speaking to kids in care and going to a lot of these organizations and speaking to children and youth that are in a similar situation or worse that I was in, and I just say to them like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Like
Sure.
You know what I find actually, like it's interesting because not to the same degree, obviously, because Brendan's running several elections now and everything, but I ran in one election that I did not win, and that forever changed.
you didn't listen to me.
Fair enough.
Didn't
but
listen to me.
That fair enough. But either way, it forever changed me. Either way, and yeah, I didn't win, but maybe that was for the best anyway. But either way, it changed me a lot, my perspective and how I saw things, and really like listened to people, and went out and, in a way, although maybe I didn't listen to Brendan, I feel that the way I did things, I learned a lot and changed who I am as a person. And a lot of that is talking to people who would have been
in what
your
ways, like specifically?
well, just like I get to see different perspectives of certain people, right? Like I'm a white straight man, and that's my perspective in life, and that's all I ever really knew. And I tried to be empathetic and sympathetic to other people, and tried to listen to it. But it's different when you like listen to people, when you have discussions with people. But then when you actually go out and like talk to people, see it, and then talk to people and truly really listen. Because when I went to people's doors, or when I addressed situations, like when I decided to run, my first few months was literally just about asking questions and trying to find out what the community wanted. Before I even formed what my quote-unquote platform would be, I wanted to know what the people who I would represent wanted. So I did a lot of talking, and even after I kind of formed what I wanted, I still kind of did some talking. I visited a lot of low-income people's like homes and built those relationships, and that changed me. And I didn't come from like a wealthy family by any means, but I still didn't come from these types of communities. And you were literally raised in it, so it's like it's interesting to know, like coming from that and knowing like bouncing around a lot and coming from these things and having a lot of the social problems, socioeconomic problems that we want to fix. You came from it, so it's a good thing. I think that's like
you don't forget it. Like you don't forget what it's like to cash a $27 check for food, right? Like you know what I mean? Like I don't care what situation you're in for the rest of your life. Like it's ingrained in you. Like and I always say like this is a very diverse community, but it's also like you can see some of the poorest of the poor and some of the richest of the rich in this community, depending on where you go. And I've always felt most comfortable with working class and like individuals like that, because I feel like, and low in like people that are struggling and things like that. Like you can put me in a room, and because I think I've experienced it and I know what it's like. But what I'll say is, like, when I first got elected, like I said, no one gave me a chance to win, and but for me it was like when you talked about like your daughter getting that card. That's all part of what I wanted to do. Like I wanted people to like. There's different type of politicians, and some are like, they're about the big picture, which is fine. Others you know, they're driven to become the minister of this or become something bigger than. For me, it was just always about like Chris Hornberger was my campaign manager, and she was just like sat me down one day and said, like, why? Like, what the fuck? Like, why are you doing this? Like,
what drives you?
And then I would give these answers like, and then eventually she just like hammered it away at me and hammered it away. And I was like, you know what? For me, finally I was like, because I owe. Like, I just owe. Like,
what?
I owe people. Like, there's a lot of people in this community who I lived with. There's a lot of people in this community that helped me. And so for me, it was always about that. And I didn't give a fuck about, like, ministers or promotions or anything like that. And it's funny because, like, I'll have these conversations with other MLAs. They're either, liberal, PC, or conservative.
Sure.
And we get in these conversations if we're in committee or if, like, we're in the legislature. And I'll say something and they'll say, oh, you're never going to be a minister or whatever. And I say to them, like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't. And they don't believe me. And I'm like, I really don't. Because I believe that you're, like, I don't think this is a job you do forever. I think you're privileged to do it. And I think for me, it's about making sure that people's voices are heard. And Matt, and you probably see it too, but Matt sees it all the time and people say it to me all the time, like, especially on social media, like, I'll engage with people that are, like, hateful or they're very, like,
angry. I see I've seen anger more than once, and I'm always just like,
and they're like, why are you engaged?
And I'm like, does it even with my limited knowledge base of what you do, I'm like, is this dude even responsible for this? Like, it's just kind of like, whoa, we'll just chill out for a minute.
But my partner Rena, she always says, like, why do you respond? And I'm like, I have a hard time with, like, I just want people to be heard. So I'm like, okay, like, if this person's angry or hates me or doesn't agree with me, that's fine, but I shouldn't ignore them. Now, you know what? Listen, I'll be the first to say, like, I've blocked a few people on social media, and it's because you have to, for your own sanity sometimes. Yeah. But for me, it's just about, like, being an MLA or being a politician or public servant is just that. You're a public servant, and you don't. I've been part of some really tough decisions, and people that were impacted, I went to their house and spoke to them and let them have their pound of flesh.
And that's the other thing I will say too is, like, so a couple of things. I don't like to give him too many compliments, but I'll give him some here. But the thing is that what I will say is that when I think of a politician and when I defend politicians, oftentimes Brendan's who comes to mind, because I know how much hard he works, and it's not just working in the legislature, it's so many other things and so many other things. And I gave him a hard time at the beginning of this podcast about not calling me back or not responding to texts. He eventually does, but I have to sometimes harass him a little bit, and he always says, oh, sorry, I was in this and something like. And to give him some credit, sometimes he calls me back in the middle of, like, things where he probably shouldn't be calling me back in. It's like, oh, the ledge is going on, or I'm in public accounts. And
I mean.
But that being said, though, he's working all the time, and people don't see that. And, like, I think sometimes people think, like, oh, politicians are paid with my tax dollars, so I can just treat them like shit. And that part I don't disagree. And I know you've had lots of people who've, like, kind of threatened you and threatened your family.
I had people show up at my house.
That's like, see, that, and that's where, like, I cannot understand that at all. I mean,
I wasn't happy. But, I say this as a politician, you can work as little or as much as you want.
For sure. You never stop.
And
right?
I've watched MLAs in particular that barely work and continue to get reelected. And but I also believe that, listen, man, this is with any job I do, I'm going to put as much as I can into it. So
and like with me, and again, a limited knowledge base. What I aim for, I mean, every single one of us as human beings, we have a limited amount of time in the day.
Yeah.
Right. So when we see politicians, what do we want them most?
Yeah.
Left or right, center, green, yellow, whatever. Transparency.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we all want. And that's what we all crave.
Yeah.
We just want to understand what you're going. And if you can't get there, we want to understand the necessary steps. And if there are no steps, we want to know that the steps are broken.
Right.
Right? And if something's completely not able to happen by any circumstance,
Tell 'em.
an impossibility, snap your fingers, tell them.
So I've had people like when we've made tough decisions that I've gone and talked to them to their face and say, this is why.
Yeah.
This is why. And
I believe you do. And
and
I believe you do, even from what the little I've witnessed on your
they'll
Facebook.
They'll say to me, you're a fucking asshole. I'll never vote for you again. But you know what? Thanks for showing up to talk to me about it.
I
That's fair.
That's all you can do.
And I'm actually happy with that. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like, you might think I'm the world's biggest asshole for voting the way I voted, but at least you know that I'm not hiding.
I think 90% of life is sales and service, and when you look at a politician, how is it any different from the electrician or the sandwich artist or whoever?
So what do you do on? What's your main job?
Insurance right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's I mean, but it's the same thing. Like I think that.
Like honestly though, like realistically, we have 2 insurance guys and a politician. Who are the 2 most hated people in society?
We throw a lawyer in here and we're good to go, right?
Seriously. Yeah. But okay, but honestly, going back a little bit, like when I first met, like I shouldn't say first met Brendan because I knew who he was beforehand, but when I first kind of like
when he was working against me in a
that's
campaign.
True. Yeah. So basically, I didn't know he was running, and I wasn't like I was.
We didn't know each other that well.
Not that well. I knew who you were, but that's about it. And so the thing is like so. Brendan was running. I was asked to be like a co-campaign manager for somebody who I knew who worked with my mother, who was a lawyer.
Yeah.
Funny enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, he asked me like, "Hey, would you join my campaign team? I'd like to be one of my campaign managers for the region because I was really well known in Herring Cove. So they're like, I'd like you to really kind of manage that area for me."
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I said, he asked me, I knew him, and he was a good dude. So I was like, "Sure." Yeah. And then the debates start to happen and all this stuff, and I learned who's running and all that other stuff. And quite honestly, the funny thing is, my wife went to every single debate, and my wife was like, easily, she was like, "You won pretty much every debate," because a lot of the other ones would like step away. Like she has a journalism degree. Her first degree is journalism, so she overanalyzes this. So we love watching debates. So, like, you were staying your ground, not stepping back, not the kind of, like, all those body signs and stuff like that, and you weren't doing any of it. And so my wife was like, "Oh, yeah, Brendan did, like, really, really well," type of thing, and all of those things.
Well, and they all did this. It's funny because when I listened to them, it was my first election, and I listened to so I got into it for us. Like, that was what, like, like that elevator, when you're trying to figure out, when you're trying to figure out in your head, like what Chris brought out of me is like, why do you want to do this? And one of the things that kept coming up for me was like, I just want to do it for us. We deserve better.
Your community, your friends, your environment.
And so I kept listening at the first debate, and my 2 opponents kept saying, I.
Yeah.
I did this. I did that.
Big difference.
I.
And that's where you.
And then I stopped and said, like,
yeah.
Like, I kept saying we, like, this is, and in the end I said, the difference between the 3 of us up here right now is you've got 2 people that are saying, I did this. Like, one opponent was like, I literally built that building brick by brick by brick. And I'm like, nah, you fucking didn't. But anyways, and
it's
so
not even that. It's just the rage element of you owing them something like a job.
I'm like, this
that's
isn't
preposterous to me.
Yeah.
It's like you did the things you wanted to do.
Yeah,
right.
Like
and you got paid
else.
to do it.
Yeah,
right.
And,
exactly.
And then in the end, I was just like, this is what's wrong with people, politicians, and the system. It's the I. It can't be that anymore. It's got to be we, and it's got to be us, and that's what made, I think, the difference the first time when my people gave me a chance. Is that my wife again?
Yeah. She's good.
She's good.
She's good.
We went pretty long here too.
She's fair.
No, we're good. We just got like 10 minutes.
But I guess the last bit though, politics is that, and the other thing that I think about politics that just really seems unfortunate is that we make choice sometimes, and that choice comes with so much more than what people warrant, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to make an informed decision without joining a political party,
well, that's
or like an entire idealism of thought, right? It's like no. I like that conservative idea.
It's
but I'm not I don't want to fully switch everything that I believe.
Do you want to hear something messed up?
Yeah.
Conservatives have good ideas.
Great ideas.
The Green Party
Great
has good
ideas.
ideas. Liberals have good ideas.
Absolutely.
NDP have great
Everyone
ideas.
Does.
Yeah.
Everyone does.
I say this all the time when I stay in the legislature because we put forward ideas, and because we're in opposition now, it doesn't go through. But you know what? When we were in government, the Conservatives would put forward ideas, and the Premier at the time would not put them forward. And I said it then, and I'll say it again. I'm like, a good idea is a good idea, no matter who it comes from.
Right.
Yeah.
And we should be like, if someone comes up with a good idea,
that's what's going to make the difference in a whole society. Is that welcoming of ideas that might
more
not always
divisive
come
now.
from your end of the table.
It is.
I don't know how we. I said the problem is I don't know how we overcome the divisiveness, and we like to blame.
It seems to be worse than ever. And whenever there's enforcement, like we're going through tougher times here in Canada and Nova Scotia, and whenever there's tougher times, it translates to these higher polarizing opinions.
But I also think like we like to. That's the other thing is like they like to blame the right. Like everyone always says Donald Trump, but you know like the Liberals have been pretty divisive at times too, and I've watched it. Like all the parties have been divisive, and I think that they do it for their own power gain, and I just think.
I mean, you know,
it drives me fucking
they do
nuts.
so many fights to get ballots and votes on the left and the right, or
Yes.
maybe even the middle. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe what should we go for now is the anti-vote.
The thing is, like,
It's going to happen,
And the guys like me who I'm like, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to vote for the best things for our community, our folks, the people around us, and really just make an informed decision, not care who the face is.
Think about this for a second. In Nova Scotia right now, we have a majority PC government, which is fine.
Yeah.
They had, I think, 30, I might be wrong, but it's like 32 or 34%. They won 34% or 36, sorry, of the vote. Mm-hmm. They got a majority government from that, and less than 50% of Nova Scotians voted. So they had like, let's say 38%. Of 50%, and got a majority government because people aren't voting because they're like, you're all the fucking same.
Pissed off people are voting.
But here's the thing: is
people that are pissed off are voting.
Yeah,
it's quite frustrating for someone like myself, who I consider myself pretty neutral for the most part. Like I will vote. I voted for all three colors. I'll vote for who I think is right at the time. I mean, I support Brendan no matter what, just because, he's a good friend, but I also think he's genuine, right? But the thing is like, even back, like I always kind of, for a long time, I've considered myself someone who's community active, community leader. And when Brendan did win, it was one of those things where it wasn't like, okay, well, my guy lost, so like I hate Brendan. Mm-hmm. It was we started working with each other almost right away. Like I consider I was a business person in the community that wanted to like spend my company's money in the community, also get a name for myself, but also work with the person who's in power, because that's what we do. And from that, I think a really strong friendship came about with that. But not just working with things. I mean, we've bonded over other things. My cousin Tommy, who committed suicide in 2008. Brendan knew him and kind of grew up with him and everything, so we bonded over a little bit of that too, like early on. Yeah. And Tom was one of my closest cousins and stuff like that. So like that was something that obviously mattered a little bit to me because we talked a little bit about that. But it's but from that, like it's amazing that sometimes like we were on the opposite. When we really first started interacting, we were on opposite sides.
Oh yeah. I was way more left than I used to be. Like I was way more left then than I am now, and I think you were way more right than you
100%.
are now. Yeah,
100%.
And I think some of the issues we couldn't have been further apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think you mature, and that's the other thing. Not mature. I shouldn't say mature.
I don't think you mature.
You evolve.
I think you evolve because your age, your predicament, where you are in life,
and life circumstances,
what you accomplished, and what you see going in, what you see going out, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, I'm doing all the things, I'm checking all the boxes. Yeah. Why am I not in a comfortable financial situation?
But you also find, I think you also see like things aren't black and white.
Yes.
And that's the other thing. Like there's gray areas, things, your opinion on things change depending on the circumstances. This whole term about like, they say politicians flip-flop. Like, you know what?
That's a good thing.
I want a politician who when faced with
Me
different realities
too.
and different facts,
Me
will
too.
actually change their fucking mind.
So
it's the
too.
ones that
Yes.
that stay
and
strong
that's something I do
that
agree with.
bother me.
As
So the
long as
only
you
time-
explain your way and
Yes.
your thought process,
Yeah.
and be fair to the people that are just not fully understanding.
The one thing like when
I
it
agree
comes to
with that.
when it
Yeah.
comes to flip flopping and stuff like that, like I think there's a difference between changing your mind and flip flopping.
well, there's a difference between changing your mind and fucking lying.
No,
Yeah.
no. But
Let's
no,
be
but-
clear,
No, but
because
what I mean
that's what happens.
No. Hold on,
Right.
hold on. What I mean by flip flopping and then like changing your mind is like changing your mind is like, okay, I believe a certain thing, and then over a process of X amount of time, I've come to gather some new evidence, or I've seen some things, and now you know what? I kind of think this way now. I see the other side of this, and I think we can modify some things. Now, if you go to one town and say something, and then go to another town and say something, and you're a populist
that's
person,
lying.
That's lying. It's flip flopping on depending on the town. You're flip flopping and things like that.
But I like, for example, like myself, like I would argue that my view of the world has changed since I've had children,
Sure.
as it will.
Respect
right?
that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
As you
I
get
think
older,
everyone does. Yeah.
as you get older, as you know, like, and so you know, if you would have asked a 20-year-old Brendan what he believed compared to like I'm 47 now, it's I mean it's
vastly
Hey,
different.
that old?
vastly
Jeez, I
different.
didn't think you were that much older than me.
48.
I'm thankful I can
Yeah,
get a
you're
tattoo.
10 years older than me. I thought for some reason
Yeah.
you were not that much older than me.
Shut
In
up.
20s, I would have got like a ghetto fisherman tattooed
Yeah.
on my torso
Listen,
and been
I-
the rapper
that's
of
what
my
he has.
dreams.
in my 20s, I had a mohawk, I had piercings,
Sure.
I had stretched ears, and I still had my tattoos.
Man, we evolve, we change,
Yeah.
we grow, we learn.
I do kind of miss the mohawk
Yeah.
sometimes. So
Right? Like, and that,
There's a
that's
fundraising
cool.
idea.
now my wife would kill me.
Yeah, no, she wouldn't do the blonde hair. We wanted to do blonde hair.
He.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to do
fucking
blonde
blonde
hair.
Okay.
Just tips. I thought we were going to do like an NSYNC thing.
Just the tips.
yeah,
Yeah?
just the tip.
Well, you guys have fun with that.
But yeah, I mean, so the moral of the story for me is that I just don't. I think that you can do circumstances suck and they're hard to overcome and it's not fair. And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned in my life is that you can't let. So like obviously like my parents, my biological parents and
Sure.
others that started me out in a shitty situation and people that had said horrible and shitty things about me when I was a kid and growing up like that, like at some point, and it's not easy because it didn't happen until I was in my early 30s, like you have to let that baggage go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because for me, what I realized was like it's almost like they're re-abusing you over and over and they're holding you down even though they're not part of your life anymore.
No, they
like,
live rent free in your head.
yeah, so for me, I was like, one day I was like, fuck this, like, you've had enough. And my big turning point actually is I took a year and lived overseas and taught English, and I spent time in England, and I got to meet my real family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so both my parents, my biological parents, had passed away by then, but like I got to meet the rest of them. And the first thought in my head was like, thank fuck I didn't live with these people. You know what I mean? Like,
funny.
so I just think that, I tell kids that all the time when I talk to them. I'm like, man, like I know it's shitty now. I know like there's a lot of things going on in your mind and stuff like, but the best way you can win is by winning. Like, be successful.
Sure.
So
and
my
it's not just
motto-
money. Like for me, my biggest thing was like, I'm going to have a family, and I'm not going to be abusive, alcoholic prick.
Yeah.
That was a big thing for me.
And a vision you stuck to, executed,
Yeah.
and got there, and
With a lot of help.
congratulations on that.
Yeah.
And see, my motto, like honestly in life is, and I think it's St. Augustine that said this, I could be wrong, but it's don't drink poison and expect other people to get sick.
Yeah.
And that's like the biggest thing. If I ever get a tattoo, that's probably what I'll get tattooed right
That's
now.
a lot of words.
It is, but well, listen, you have tons of words here. Your kids' names, but still lots of words.
yeah.
But anyway, but it's just one of those things where it's like people will just like hold on to things and not let it go. And the fact is that nobody else cares that you're mad at them. The only thing it affects is you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Cool. Well, I
right.
think that's good enough to go on, man.
That's
it.
it.
I really
Yeah.
appreciate you hanging out with us,
Yeah,
man.
awesome.
And,
Yeah.
Thanks for the water.
Nice to talk to you.
Thanks for the
no
water.
Problem. Anytime. Water's free. Come by anytime you like.
Thank you, gentlemen.
No,
All
thank
right.
you.
I look forward to it.
Have a great
Alrighty.
night.
Talk to you.
tuning in to this episode of The Afternoon Pint. If you have an idea for the show or would like to be a part of it, email us at afternoonpint@gmail.com.